Hi, this is Sheb Varghese. Welcome to the Faith Colloquium podcast. Today I'm joined by Emily Knight, Camilla Canner, Connor Lee, and Elizabeth McGarry. I had the honor and privilege of teaching these guys philosophy. Thanks for talking with me, guys.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
I'm excited.
So today we're talking about friendship, and maybe I'll start by kind of opening it up to you guys. You guys have all been in college or just graduated college. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on what friendships are like during the college stage and what kind of experiences you guys have had.
Well, from my brief time in college, since I only did a year, and the situation was a little different, I'll say that, but everything seemed very temporary since so many people come from so many different places. And then once that you're done, everybody kind of leaves to go to a different place. And so it very much felt like these are temporary relationships just because we're all in the same context right now. And there are only a handful of people, I think, that I even talk to on a somewhat regular basis from that time. So, I mean, in brief, that was my experience, just very temporary friendship at that.
Yeah, I think I can relate to that. I'm from Massachusetts, and that's where I am now, but school was in Washington State. So going all the way there and then having the school end up closing, it was a shorter amount of time. But we also had kind of a unique experience, where we lived, and we had like the community housing rather than dorms and stuff like that. So just being there and kind of being pushed into a more, I think it felt more like natural life, living in houses and having neighbors and friends and stuff like that. It was almost easier than in a dorm, and you kind of felt more, I felt like I was living, a normal life, kind of, not just in college as part of, growing up almost. And my friendships were really good. They grew really deep because we all lived together and we learned things about each other and just had, deeper conversations and then more fun times, which is, I think, the normal college experience. But yeah, like Connor said, since we went to the same school, it did kind of end short. And now moving back home, you have to be more intentional with your friendships. And so I think that is also something that when you graduate, that's a very normal experience where, I hear people say a lot like, oh, spend as much time as you can like in college because it's the best time of your life and you're with everybody that you love and all your friends and stuff like that. But so we were kind of pushed out of that sooner than we had anticipated, which is both good and bad. But I think that, it's just, I think it's kind of like a normal life experience where everyone has, like, they graduate and then you have to become more intentional with the people that you truly care about, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. I felt like it was somewhat of a, kind of similar to what you were talking about, Elizabeth, with the housing and just such a great Christian community, that it was almost a very easy environment for friendships to grow and to start, but not necessarily to be maintained, because I almost had this false sense of ease with friendships that isn't realistic to how much effort actually needs to be put in to maintaining a friendship. And so I have friendships that while we were in the same location, living in the same house, in the same city even, were very easy, but, having moved and transferred schools and all that stuff, it was kind of revealing as to how many friendships were more just out of convenience while I was in that environment. So I have a question. These friendships that you're talking about, Camilla and Elizabeth, like, did you go into college thinking I'm going to make as many friends as possible, or did you
like, what was your strategy for making friends? Was it, I'm going to have 5 really good friends, or I'm just going to be friends with everyone?
I was a missionary kid, and so I moved around a lot growing up and kind of did not know how to grow deep friendships and how to... I also wasn't motivated to do that because in my experience, everybody just kind of like was in transition growing up, and I was always moving or somebody else was always moving. And so when I came to college and saw how many good people there were, I think I was very excited to just like build deep relationships and kind of rubber banded to the opposite end of like just trying to, instead of being jaded, just trying to like make as many friendships as possible, and ended up realizing that's not super realistic. And so I think I had to take a step back and realize what I could actually plausibly spend time, investing in people, and what I needed to like let go of, because I'm not going to be close to everybody, and that's okay. So kind of rubber banding between like this jaded perspective and this then overexcitement, I had to kind of find the middle ground, which a transition to another school and now a move across the country is helping me realize like who I actually am able to exert energy into getting to know and things like that.
Yeah, I kind of had a different experience. I mean, that's normal, but so I was homeschooled for middle school, and then I went to a smaller Catholic school for high school. And so my friends who I grew up with, I still have. And so when I went to college, I remember, and it was such a big move too, like across the country. I just remember praying to God, asking him just for one friend. Like, I just need to meet one person. And that would be enough for me to be comfortable. And so I wasn't looking for a ton of friends, and I was fortunate to move into a house with, I think my first year it was 5 other girls, and they were all around my age, which was kind of unique because we weren't like, none of us were right out of high school. We had taken years off, or we went to a community college, or, what have you. So, that was kind of cool. And I don't know, it just kind of worked out. So I wasn't necessarily like looking for a lot of friends, but I made friends with a group of like core people who I'm still close with and I'm able to be intentional with. But again, because of the move, we really do have to work on being friends still, because it's not just that ease of like, oh, you want to come over tonight? We don't live close. So
Emily, did you want to share anything or about your experience?
Yeah, so when I moved to Spokane, I kind of just jumped in. I knew that I wasn't going to be friends with everyone, and kind of opposite of you, Camilla, I was okay with that. I made a small group of friends who I'm still very, very close to, and most of us are all over the country now, but we still talk. Gosh, I probably talk to at least one of them every week. And so like starting out small, having those small friendships or like a smaller group of friends, I've been able to cultivate like a much deeper relationship rather than sort of spreading myself thin among a lot of people. So it's been really cool to know that the few friends that I made in college, those are going to be my lifelong friends. I know I can always call them, or I can stop at their house if I'm in their town, or something like that.
That's actually, so as I road trip across the country, it's been very cool to realize, I do have like friends, deep friendships across the country that I can like stay with. I love that kind of standard of a friendship where it's deep enough that we don't see each other all the time, but when we do, it's such a sweet moment and we can like rely on each other for like favors like this.
Yeah. It makes road trips great.
Connor, I had a question for you. So you mentioned the temporariness of the kind of relationships in college. Does that make it like less of a desire to want to invest in friendships? Because it's like, okay, like, look, I'm only going to be with these people for maybe, 2, 3, 4 years. Or was it more of like, oh gosh, I have to like really cherish this time? What were your feelings about that?
Yeah. Well, I too have like moved around quite a bit just throughout my life and don't really have a ton of long lasting friendships. So I think in general, my approach, unintentionally or intentionally, like depending on the situation, is more of a just, okay, this probably isn't going to last forever. And so that does make it harder. And I want to like be about investing in making the most of the time I have with people, but it's a lot of just internal, like getting over that mindset, I guess, that I have already. So when I like got to Moody, at first I was like, I'm going to really invest here and I want to make the most of these relationships. But then after like a month and a half or 2 months, when they said that the school was closing it, I definitely like pulled out a little bit and was like, all right, maybe not these specific relationships. Maybe I'll wait. So yeah, that was, and I mean, there's a lot that goes into that with the school closing and everything, but
yeah. Do you guys feel like, the friendships, like, so Elizabeth, you kind of mentioned friends that you had in high school. Do you feel like the friendships you have that you made in college, that those ones are like, oh, these people know me better than the people that in high school, or like these are like more deeper friendships? What do you guys think about that?
I think for me, at least, the friendships that I've had from a very young age and throughout high school, they've kind of seen all of me and like different parts and different transitions, which is good. But when it's for my friends who knew me just in high school and it stopped at high school, I was a pretty, not like a super different person, but I think college and moving away and all these different things really helped solidify my faith. And also there were lots of trials throughout just growing up more and losing friends of mine, passing away, and just like lots of different transitions that happened that my friendships from high school didn't see. They saw a very, I don't know, it was just like a different type of friendship, and they're good. But I think that, I don't know, maybe if people saw me today, they'd be surprised at how much more invested in my faith I am, and like what a rock that's become, my faith in my life. Whereas people in college only knew me, then and there, and now they know who I am, but they also don't know like what I've been through to make me the person I am today. And so I think it's good and bad, it's how it's meant to be. Some people just come in your life for different seasons, and I think that's fine, but it's just different.
I feel like the type of people that I interacted with in college, or maybe even the type of people that Moody attracted, were those who were willing to have deeper conversations. And so it's maybe not the most realistic comparison between that and my high school, because that was obviously, I mean, I went to a public high school and growing up had such transitory friendships. But so I found that the conversations were deeper, but that didn't necessarily mean that the friendships were deeper. So having just visited, among my travels, a friend of mine who I've known since I was like 9, she knows me very, very well, even though it's been a while since we've seen each other, and was able to see, like Elizabeth was saying, the transition or the growth that I've exhibited from, having a faith that was more surface level to having a deeper faith, and even the like ups and downs within that. And so that to me is deeper than even some of the deeper conversations I experienced in college, though I did appreciate those, and those did push me to grow and are certainly the reason why I have grown in my faith, in part. But yeah, I don't, while I appreciate the deeper conversations, I don't think that indicates necessarily a deeper relationship.
Yeah, I have a question for you on that. Was it difficult for you? Because I found that when I was in college, and we were having those deep conversations, we had to talk about serious issues because of the classes that we were taking, or just topics that came up that, like, you know, just Christian young people really want to talk about deeper things. So it's difficult. And for me, I found that I am a very like inward person. I don't really want to talk about too many deep things, you know? And so in the class setting, when we had to talk about it, or even when the conversations in class would be done and everyone wanted to keep talking about it, I found it extremely difficult to keep talking about it and to keep opening up with people that I didn't consider really close friends. So did you have any experiences like that it was just like difficult to be open?
Yeah, I definitely had quite a few people that I didn't feel comfortable enough with to keep talking about these deeply personal or vulnerable issues, because that is what will come up in a class like spiritual life and community. So I definitely was reserved when it came to those. There were people that I didn't get along with, as much as I tried to like everybody and have everybody like me. And so I do relate to that, as it was a select few. But then I also found it to be very helpful to open up to those who I wouldn't normally open up to, because that would, maybe start a conversation where they would feel more willing to be vulnerable and I could learn from them. But there's also the component of like emotional exhaustion and not being able to put in the energy to open up. But yeah, I get that.
Emily, Connor, thoughts on any of that? High school friendships versus college, or deep conversations or anything like that?
Yeah, in my experience, and again, I was in high school 4 times as long as I was in college, but those friendships are like way more real to me now than any of the ones I had in college. And I had a moment of realizing that, I think a month ago. I went and got coffee with somebody that I lived with while we were at Moody, and I would have said yeah, this is a friend of mine. And then 3 days later got to go back home and visit my family and got to see friends. And just like the closeness, even though proximity wise we're not very close, but just the life that we have experienced together, kind of like some other people have said, just like there's some bond there still, even though we're not so close, as far as like literally we're not like face to face, but those have definitely lasted longer, and I talk to those people a lot more, and there just is that bond from doing life together in a lot of different seasons, and then being a part of ups and downs, and especially like people that I graduated with, just experiencing transition together. And those are the more real of those two relationships. But I don't know if we're going this direction. I would say post college and more like adult life, that those relationships are by far the most like intimate that I experience now. And they're way harder because I have to be way more intentional. But I found like that intentionality is definitely worth it, and have gotten to experience like a very real form of friendship post college.
Can I ask if you went to like a public high school or a Christian private school or anything?
Yeah, I went to a large public high school and did public school my entire life.
Were your friends Christians or no?
There was a mix for sure, and I was closer to the Christian friends, but I would say I had like a core group of friends, and they were all Christian. Yeah.
Yeah. So in my experience, gosh, maybe in like the 10 or 15 friends that I had in high school, I speak with 2 of them and it's maybe like it's very infrequent, maybe once, if not maybe every other month or less than that. But my friends in college, even the friends that have moved away, I speak with them very consistently, like definitely at least once a month, because so much has changed. I've been in Washington for 5 years. I moved out here 5 years ago. And so much has changed in my life in those times. And my friends in college, obviously through proximity, we're living together or down the street from each other. They've walked me through those different transitions in my life and things that have happened. And so I feel much more bonded with them. And my 2 friends that I still have from high school, those are the friends who would still reach out to me after having moved away. Many of the other ones didn't. And so they're not my friends anymore. Not in like they're not my friends anymore, shake my fist kind of way, but just, we live far away. We don't do things together anymore. It's just kind of that natural separation of friendship. But I will say what one of my mentors used to say a long time ago, the best way to build friends and maintain friendships is through shared experiences. And I found that very true in my own friendships, is the friends that I have shared experiences with. Those are deeper friendships, because you're doing the same things. You're living life together. You're battling the same sort of, things just in everyday life of having to go to work and go to school and, other friends that might have drama or whatever. You're in it together. And so those shared experiences really bond people together.
Definitely.
Well, I just hear everybody saying, like shared experiences, and especially because, we both love Jesus, or we have the same passion for, our work, or, and like a ministry setting and stuff like that. Do you guys think that because we're Christians, we'll only be like really close to other Christians? Or do you think that, it's, I don't know, I don't want to say it's possible because it sounds like more finite, but do you think it is possible to like be really close and intentional with non-Christians? Like when you're a Christian, you're living that life and you're seeking like with everything that you have to follow the Lord, Does that make sense?
Man, asking the tough questions over there.
I think it's possible. I mean, like, isn't that what God calls us to do, is to be friends with people who, don't know the gospel? But I think on some level, the friendship will break down because you just maybe you don't agree on these fundamental beliefs that you have. And so on some level, you won't really understand them and why they do the things that they do, or they won't understand you and why you do the things that you do. So I'm not saying that you can't be friends or you can't have a deep relationship, but I think definitely there is a discrepancy between just your worldview and how you operate.
Yeah, I mean, that's something I don't really know too much about. I would say, like, again, because I was homeschooled and then I went to a Catholic school and then I went to a Christian school, most of my acquaintances and friends and close friends are all believers. So, I definitely, I have family and neighbors and all that who are non-believers, and I think for me it's been a little bit more difficult to be very close to them because we just see the world so differently. But I don't think it's impossible, and I don't think it should be. Like, I think we should be, communicating with each other and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I have a question for Emily. so with those friendships that are with those who don't know the gospel, and you mentioned, Jesus asks us to do that. Are those friendships for the sake of sharing the gospel, or are there other motivations to have those friendships?
Yeah, well, I guess it just depends. I mean, okay, I'll say this. In any friendship where your friend does not have a faith in Christ, I think, as Christians, like on some level, like, yes, we want you to follow Jesus. We want you to be saved. I care for your soul as not just a person, but as your friend. Like, I deeply care for your soul. But I think you're asking maybe like how those friendships start. And that could be, gosh, any number of ways. You could be coworkers. You could just have a shared hobby that you run into each other all the time. It could be a mutual friend introduces you and you become friends. But I think as a friendship develops, sharing the gospel with them should definitely be a priority, whether or not they accept it or they want to continue being friends with you because you're always talking about Jesus. I don't know. I've had friends who are like, okay, like that's enough. We need you to stop. And I'm like, okay, well, that's that then. But
yeah, I ask because I've heard the perspective that even in the more subtle ways of, being a light to the world and just a good example of Christ's love and not necessarily like evangelizing explicitly, friendships built on that goal of sharing the gospel explicitly or implicitly can be viewed as manipulative to the person who does not know Christ and feels like you're only being friends with them for the sake of like pushing your agenda. I've heard this perspective. And so is there room for friendships with non-Christians without that? I don't know, like how do you avoid that manipulation, or is that just something that person that I was talking to wasn't ready to hear, the gospel or something like that? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's just, like living your life to honor God. Like I'll be friends with you. We don't have to talk about the gospel. We don't have to talk about faith or the Bible, but like you should just kind of know what I believe because of how I live. And I don't think that's manipulative at all. Like saying like, hey, I disagree with you about that because of my faith, and just saying it very, or just like living that, like, I disagree with you, but I'll still be friends with you. Like we can still hang out and go get coffee. But, yeah, like this is just who I am. This is part of me. And we can still be friends without these like very intentional, I'm going to convert you to Christianity relationships.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, your life and your relationship with God is a testament to who he is. And that is certainly a way to share the gospel less explicitly.
I also think that in a kind of a different way, it's not like fully relatable, but it could be, for the Christian, and her passion for the Lord is something that is a passion in her life. And so just like another friend would share like his love for, I don't know, computer engineering or like painting or something like that, a person's faith is their passion. It's what they do. And so I think that naturally, that passion would come out in a person's life. Like Emily was saying, like her whole life is the gospel and sharing it. And so like people around her, again, whether, verbally or non-verbally, they're going to see that she loves Jesus. And so I think it would just come out in a friendship anyway. I don't think it would necessarily be something that's like, oh, I'm trying to manipulate you into learning more about Jesus, because it's just, somebody's going to talk about painting because they love it so much and they want other people to know like how amazing it is, know? Mm-hmm. And I think, again, like, I think it's a little bit different because for us, we believe, or, Christians believe like having Jesus in your life is is the most important thing. And so like painting, obviously there's a breakdown with that, but I think it can run a similar, line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
Connor, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was. And I agree with a lot of the stuff that's been said, and that like your intentions going in really like pretty much dictate if it's going to be a healthy relationship. But what I was going to say is just that I think we would all agree that those deeper friendships are because, to sprinkle a little Aristotle in here, like we pursue virtue, we pursue like kind of the same values and appreciate the same things and are striving for those. And even with the non-Christian, at least from what I've experienced, there are some people who we value the same thing, but just the way that I see you get there, and I would say like the only way you get there is different, and that's through Jesus. So in like our very post-Christian context, almost everybody values like justice and peace and love. And so we're all pursuing that, but they just pursue it in a different way. And so you can like be friends with them because you still value the same things. And there are moments, at least again from my experience, where my friend who doesn't follow Jesus, who still wants these like things like love and peace, like the benefits of the kingdom of God, they realize that they can't get there without having the king in their life. And so that like opens conversation to, okay, I want the same things you want, but you're experiencing them and I'm not. Like, where's the breakdown here? And so like there's health in the relationship just because we're pursuing the same things. And then naturally, I think as you just continue to be friends with them and continue to love them and are like, yeah, I get it, then those conversations can kind of like naturally happen, but that doesn't have to be the motive in being their friend of like, oh, I'm going to show them how wrong they are and how the way I live is better. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Pastor Connor coming in.
I really appreciate you engaging with that question. So that's a question that I've had for a while. So I appreciate it.
One more question I was thinking about was I don't know how many of you guys, I think all of you are single, but I don't know how many of you guys have friends who have gotten married recently, but I feel like something that I experienced again was that I got married after college and found it really hard to maintain friendships, especially because a lot of my friends weren't married. And so I kind of noticed this dramatic drop in my friendships after I got married, which I didn't like. I didn't think that was a good thing. But I feel like that's very common. Has that been your guys' experience with friends who've gotten married? And what would you say we can do about that? That, when we get married, we're not just saying like, all right, like, see you later to our friends.
Well, so in my experience, most of my friends who have gotten married, or actually my best friend is getting married in a few months, but they all also moved away at just about the same time, if not a few months after they got married. So that definitely, for me, has been so much harder to, I don't want to say maintain that friendship because I still speak with them, but it's definitely changed the friendship because you went through this huge life change and then you moved away. And so I can't, pop into your house or like invite you over to my house or do things like that. So that definitely has changed marriage and friendship for me. And I don't know how to reconcile, like, okay, like you got married, you moved away. I don't know how to be a good friend and help you through things that you're experiencing because you are not here anymore. Not that okay, well, sayonara, you got married and moved away. But I just don't know kind of what you would require of me in that friendship, I guess. Like, I don't know how to help you, man. Like, I'm just not in the same circumstances.
It's kind of like living life together. It's a different stage of life, and it's maybe harder to relate. Is that what you're kind of getting at, Emily?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why I have this strange idea. And like, when I think about it and put it into words, it sounds a little bit, I don't know. I like know it wouldn't work out when I put it into words, if that makes sense. Let me explain. Like, I know a lot of people who have been married and they get married and I just have this idea that now they have a partner where if they have any kind of issue or struggle or problem or like, you know, what have you, they'll go to their significant other rather than their friends to try and solve that. Or even if it's not a problem, it could just be like they want to go to the beach, so they'll ask their significant other or their, you know, husband or wife to go to the beach instead of asking friends. And so like I find that I reach out less because I'm like, oh, they already have like somebody to do stuff with. Like they don't need another friend. They don't want another friend, if that makes sense. Like I have people who, you know, like Emily said, they move away or they go on their honeymoon and then you kind of just don't really talk anymore because they do things on their own. And I don't know why I think that like I can't be involved in that too, or like they don't want me there, but I just always get that feeling. And so I don't know if that's something that other people experience, but for some reason I do. And maybe it's just a me thing, but
I don't think it is.
Yeah, I've experienced similar things. Yeah.
I have a question. So with those friendships, assuming that you were friends before they got married and then there's this transition, was there anything in the friendship before they got married to kind of indicate that it was going to go that direction after they got married?
Yeah, actually, I guess I would say, yeah, a lot of people I know, when they start dating, they like wholly and fully invest in their boyfriend or girlfriend, and it becomes almost a separation. Like they either like never want to do anything without the boyfriend or girlfriend, and so, which is fine. Like they're involved, but it's almost like, I don't know.
Like a precursor to what's coming in marriage.
Yeah, it's like they prefer to be with their significant other, and they show that by not wanting to include me in things, or not wanting to do anything without their significant other, if that makes sense. Like they wouldn't just prefer to do a one-on-one thing with me. Does that make sense? So it's difficult. I feel that when people get married, they would just rather be with their significant other. And so I think that in kind of almost a selfish way, like it affects my own like confidence. You know, I don't want to step on their toes and be that annoying friend third wheel who's just like there. You know. So
you just got to fully embrace it. Just, you know what? I'm coming over. Make way.
I'm not that way. I'm timid. So I don't like to, you know.
I think I've found that, honeymoon stage, in marriage, once they get past that, it's a little bit easier to be friends.
Yeah.
But there is still that, like, I don't really relate to the stage of life that you're in. And so I can learn from you, and I think you can still learn from me potentially. And so we can help each other out, and offer different perspectives, which I do value. I don't want to just be friends with the people who are the same, have the same experiences, or are in the same stage of life. But I think there is growing pains with that kind of friendship, I think. And what is maybe a testament to how strong the friendship really was is how it lasts through that kind of transitory, like, how do we navigate this? We're both, experiencing different things, and so, because I'd assume the first year of marriage or so is difficult. You're like learning how to live with another person. And so I try to offer grace to those people, those friendships, because I know that they're dealing with a lot. But I'm actually visiting a friend right now who just got married less than a year ago. And like, we haven't done a whole lot to keep in touch. And she's been busy with trying to navigate this new relationship that she's in. And it's difficult, but I think it's possible to keep going in friendship. It just might change a little or go through something a bit more rocky than you're used to.
Yeah.
Here's one more question I have for you guys. So I don't know if you guys have seen the show Friends or are familiar with the show Friends. Mm-hmm. But in the show, the characters, they're like always hanging out with each other. They're like walking into each other's apartments. They're just kind of like very casual with each other, very comfortable with each other. And I remember the closest thing I ever have experienced to something like that was when we were in seminary, and I remember having close friends, and it got to the point in our relationship where they would knock on our door, living just down the hall from us, but they would knock on our door and be like, hey, like, yeah, what's up? What's going on? They're like, nothing. We just want to see what you're doing. Oh, okay, cool. That's awesome. Come in. We're just doing this or whatever, right? And I really liked that. And I felt like, yeah, this feels like what friendship should be like. But I've also had some people tell me like that Friends TV show lifestyle, it's kind of this like unrealistic, idealized version and maybe like over romanticized or something like that. My natural instinct is kind of like to resist that and be like, well, no, maybe it's a good ideal that we should actually strive for. What do you guys think?
I remember moving to Washington and for the first time living close to people who were just friends, and we were all just going to each other's houses. And I'm like a planner, so I would always, growing up, I would make plans to like come over, and I would text like before I got there or, whatever. And so when people just came over, or my roommates or my housemates just like were totally fine with everyone in and out of our house all the time, that was like a big transition for me. And I liked it. I ended up liking it. And I think it was, realistic. If you're close with your neighbors, I think it could be an awesome thing to just like have an open house and an open door to know that people can just come in whenever they want to and just sit and like have a conversation. But also, I think it's hard in our society that's so concerned about time and regulations and planning and all these different elements. And yeah, so I think it's a little bit difficult. I don't know.
Yeah, that whole like Friends concept. I think I had that my first year at Moody Spokane, and that was probably about it. We had the girls' house, and we had some really good friends in a brother house that was like directly behind our house. And so some of these guys would just kind of come over whenever, and they'd just walk into our house. They wouldn't even knock, and we'd go over there, and it was just this fun like camaraderie of like, let's go walk around the neighborhood for no reason. But as we progressed in school and our classes got harder and we had to study more, and now being post-college, it's very different. Maybe a few of my friends, we can kind of just pop in whenever, but there's always a text that gets sent out before, like, hey, can I come over? Or are you home? What are you doing? So it's much less like spontaneous, I'm showing up at your house, but what are you doing? Do you have an hour? Like, let's plan something. And if not, it's, okay, what are you doing this Saturday? Let's plan. So there's much less of the spontaneity, which I miss. Like, I loved that we could just, go over, see who was home and hang out with them. So yeah, I think that Friends show, I've actually never seen it, but it's a bit idealistic. But I agree with you, Sheb. Like, I think that should be something that communities strive for. Like, that is what a good community is. Like, I'm coming over, or hi, I'm at your front door.
Yeah, I think the closest thing I had to that was like growing up, living in a small neighborhood and just walking over to see who of my friends were home. But yeah, as an adult, I don't think I've really experienced that. Just part of it is, like Liz was saying, the like society that values time and private, personal space and things like that. But then also like the busyness that Emily was talking about. So I think I would love that. I mean, as an introvert, I wouldn't always love it, but I think by and large, I really appreciate that kind of community because I think, like I look at examples of Christian community, like the early church in the Bible, and just how much of life they shared together and how much of their resources they shared. And I miss that, or I mean, I don't know that I really experienced it, but I long for that, that kind of community. And I think one way is to be less concerned with like personal space and these resources that we have that we hold so tightly that aren't really ours to begin with. So I would love something like that, but I don't know. I don't see it being as realistic in this day and age.
Like that might be like the kind of the busyness and the way that we view our resources and things like that. That might be more of a feature of like kind of the Western modern world, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
I will say, like, growing up in another culture, I saw a lot, actually, though it was not a Christian culture, I saw a lot more of that, like, hospitality in that.
Right.
And then I do see here. And so, yeah, I think it's possible. I just don't think Western culture is really in tune with it.
Sure.
Yeah, I do agree that ideally that could be a thing that we do. And I live like right now in a house of 4 other guys, and that's something that we have tried to put value in. And okay, we want this to be a space where people can just show up and it's like welcoming and hospitable and it feels like home to them as well. But that worked for a while, but the amount of effort that takes in simply just being there, like you can't say, oh, you can show up whenever, but nobody's at the house.
Mm-hmm.
Or like just finding a time. Like in Friends, I've only seen a little bit of it, but it's like they get their timing exactly right somehow, right. Or they know each other's schedule just perfectly, which is like almost creepy in a way, but it does seem idealistic. So at least from what I've experienced, like trying to do this in my current living situation, is that there almost has to be at least a text of like, hey, are you there?
Yeah.
Because then somebody's going to show up. If they don't text, show up and potentially be disappointed because just nobody's home. And
yeah,
like there's just that, agreed busyness that everybody else has said. And so you either have to sacrifice a lot to try and make that happen, or just accept like, okay, we're going to have some sort of communication instead of just the random spontaneous, here I am.
I think it makes a difference too, like as we're all like young single people, like we are out and about doing things all of the time. Like constantly in a different coffee shop or seeing friends and things like that. But for families, I think it's much different. I do have some like family friends who I know that I can like, send them a quick text of, hey, are you home? Or if I'm in the area, I'll stop by for maybe a few minutes just to say hi. Because with families, they're much harder to move, especially families with kids. Mm-hmm. And so I think there's a difference of, what kind of family unit you are.
Elizabeth, did you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think most of it's been said. I was thinking a couple things as we were just conversing about how, I've been to Africa, I went to India, and Ecuador, and just like different countries that I've been to on mission trips and stuff like that. We're always just walking around and going and visiting different people, and somebody would always be home, or when we were out we would see people just like on the street or wherever, and we would just stop and chat because their culture was way less time oriented and it was way more people oriented. Like they would they would drop anything that they were doing just to have a conversation with somebody that they knew and that they cared about. And I love that. I find that very appealing. And I think that just going throughout my day, like I was writing a letter yesterday and my sister came in the room and she just kept trying to talk to me in different ways. And I just stopped her and I said, Suze, I'm trying to write a letter. And then she left the room and I felt horrible after she left. I was like, why could I not just put down the pen and paper and respond to her and have a conversation with her? Because I was just too involved in my own, set thing that I had to write this letter and I had to finish it, in a certain amount of time or whatever. Like, it just doesn't matter. And I find myself stopping myself more and more, especially as I've been able to travel and just to recognize, okay, to me, I really truly want to make my priorities people and not things that I'm doing. And so I definitely want to practice that more. So I love this idea. I love this concept. I love the idea of having an open home, a place where people can just come and talk if they need, an ear to listen to or advice or just to say hi. And like Emily was saying, I have a couple of friends now and they're both families, but in the past week, they have both said like, hey, if you're ever around, just come by and say hi. And I think that they truly mean that. Like, you don't need to text me. You can just come by and say hi. Like, you don't need to email me a week before and schedule this out and plan this out. Like, they truly mean just come by, if you're there. And I think it works a lot better with neighbors. Like we were all saying, it worked for us when we were in college, all close together, like a few blocks away, because it wasn't an issue or a struggle to, it wasn't like a 20-minute ride to get to the house and then be disappointed if they're not there, like you're there already and you're just going to say hi, and it doesn't have to be for a long time. And even if it is, I don't know, I just want it to be okay. Like, I want people to know that they can come to me and that my time for them is more important than, whatever I'm doing. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I've got one more question I had in mind, but do you guys have anything else you wanted to say or any questions you had before I ask my final question?
I had one thing. When you said that we were talking about friendship today, I kind of had in my head that we were going to be talking about like the importance of friendship, just as friendship, for everyone, and maybe for Christians especially. But I feel like our culture is so concerned these days with like romantic relationships, and just like how that's the be all end all of life. And I wholeheartedly disagree. Yeah. So maybe if we could chat about that for a minute.
Yeah, that's funny. Like that thought entered my mind when we were having the conversation about marriage, and when you were talking about how people get married and it's like, oh, like their spouse is their person to hang out with, right? Yeah, and so like we kind of treat marriage as like that's the like you grow up in life, and then like the goal is to get married, right? Like once you got to that goal, then it's like you're done or something like that. And so then if you're single, like, well, it's like, well, you haven't really quite gotten to that goal, right? Like the married people have, right? Yeah, and I'm sympathetic with your critique. I mean, I think that's a bad way of thinking about it. And I think, right, it treats singleness like there's something wrong if you're single, or there's something sort of faulty about being single or something like that. And so, our culture does put a lot of emphasis on romantic love, and it's devalued friendships. And I feel like something I would like to see more of from married couples is that married couples would extend hospitality to people who are single, and it not be this thing of like, oh, like here's the third wheel, like we have to like kind of put up with you. But it's like, yeah, like we want you in our life. Like if you're a Christian, like, and if the couple's a Christian, like you're a human being made in the image of God who is trying to follow Christ. Like you have ways of seeing things that we can't see things. Like you can maybe you see some of our blind spots, right? And vice versa. If like you're a couple who has kids, I kind of feel like, gosh, there are some single people I would like. I don't want my kids to only see mom and dad. Like I want them to see like so and so and so and so, like who maybe happen to be single, right? Like I want them to have a shaping influence on my children. So I wish that, and I like my hope and desire is that married couples would think about being more intentional about being hospitable, showing hospitality to those who are single, and not treating them as though like they're still in like the waiting period until they get to like the finish line or something like that. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Oh, so I had this thought when I asked Liz if there were any like things to indicate that the friendship would change after they got married, like while they were still dating, if there were any like indicators. Because what I have found is that relationships that start with people who already have a strong sense of like what friendships can offer that are platonic, they go into marriage, by and large, is what I've observed, that they go into marriage with a better sense of like the friendships that they want to keep beyond just their spouse. And so I have had friends who don't have necessarily the healthiest view of friendship and think of friendship as just a means to find a partner or whatever. And then that is sort of indicative of them kind of shutting some people out when they get married. And that's not always the case, obviously. But I found that, and then I had a friend make the comment who is now married that she feels like she is having a harder time now learning that lesson of like what friendship can mean between, two in a platonic relationship rather than in a romantic relationship. And so I think I have seen the more hospitable married couples to be those who have a healthy view of friendship beyond just like a romantic relationship. And I do also understand like how much society does push people towards marriage, or at least to a long-lasting relationship. And I mean, I've felt the effects of that, and I think it's not the correct way to go. And I don't think it's biblical either, although marriage is very, it's valued by God and it's a beautiful thing. I think there's plenty to support that, like, singleness is also valued by God. And so to view singleness as like a disease or as something that is temporary before moving on to marriage, I think is not the best move that the church has made. So
it's especially problematic for Christians, right? It's like we literally worship a single man.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're familiar with Wesley Hill. He's an author. He wrote a book called Spiritual Friendships. In his book, he's a homosexual man. So he talks a bit more about friendship from that perspective. But in the beginning of his book, he talks about these friends who kind of went through this like ceremony similar to like a wedding ceremony. Like they invited all of these people, these two platonic friends, and they had a priest kind of say something similar along the lines of like marriage vows. And they vowed to each other that they would be friends. And I remember reading that part of the book and I was just like longing. I was like, that is awesome that these two people would just like commit themselves just to being friends. Like how much value did they put on, like, you are my friend. I want to love you. And he says in his book, he was like, it's not just, I need friends who will love me, but I have love to give to my friends.
Connor, any thoughts?
Yeah. Well, now I'm thinking about that friendship commitment that was made. But
right.
I mean, I do see the value in that. And like I think of David and Jonathan, or Jonathan and even his armor bearer, who's like, they're going into battle, and he says, hey, whatever you decide, I'm with you heart and soul. And like 1 Samuel 14, like just,
or like Naomi and Ruth, right?
Yeah. Like those deep, like, this is not a romantic thing, but this is a deep relationship, and I'm committed to it, and I want to see it flourish, and we'll work through whatever happens, but I'm committed to you and to continuing to pursue that virtue together. And so that's more what I'm thinking about right now than the marital things. And I do see like everybody said, that the church has kind of made this wonky goal that is like not directly said, but it almost seems like, oh, you follow Jesus now like, who are you going to date and who are you going to marry? And just trying to combat that. And the goal is not to be married, but the goal is Christ likeness and to continue to be conformed into the image of God and see his kingdom come and like him get the glory. And so, yeah, I don't know. There's like, it's obviously unhealthy, and how to combat that, I'm not really sure, but just continuing to reinforce that this is the goal, to become more like Jesus and partake in the building of his kingdom and the like shalom of our earth and restoring it to that. So
yeah, and I think, well, like even you leading youth, and I've led youth and wanting to be, I don't want to be a pastor, you want to be a pastor, but like telling these young people that we're influencing, like, hey, the goal is not marriage, the goal is to be like Christ. It's okay if you're not married. If you get married, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Be like Christ when you're married. And I think I've had a lot of these conversations with my friends. And so, you know, like, I don't necessarily want to be married, or sure, I want to be married one day, but not for a while, or I don't even know if I want to be married. But just like having those conversations with your friends, and if you are influencing young people, like kind of redirecting them from, maybe this sounds awful, but from what the church is kind of telling us.
Yeah, like that false narrative.
You know, marriage and family is like the most important thing. Well, actually, they're a little off base.
I don't even necessarily think that they're intentionally misleading. I think that they talk about it so much because it is so good, and because majority of people do get married and end up being in relationships. But they just don't talk as much, or they'll just have like a Sunday special, or like, you know, a retreat or something like that just for singles, when it really should be like a part of everyday life in the church, and it should be talked about way more. Just singleness, and like, what does that mean, and how does it look like, what does it look like, and that kind of thing, you know, where it's just kind of almost forgotten about. So they're not like, I don't think it's intentionally like not talking about it or like misleading the youth or whatever, but they're just not bringing it into everyday life as much as I think it probably should be.
One final thought I had was just that the way that, I mean, I think there's certainly a kind of cultural influence, the way that we think about marriage as being so consumeristic and not sacrificial, right? Which like would be a more New Testament picture of marriage, is that like when you enter into marriage, that's like a picture of still picking up your cross and following Christ. Like it's still an image of sacrifice, right? And we generally think of about marriage as like, oh, marriage is like, I get to go on vacation for like, you know, the next however many years. It's like this kind of like consumeristic thing. And not like, oh, this is an opportunity for like even greater sacrifice. And that like that sacrifice extends to like, I have to sacrifice my time, my energies. And that means sacrificing to those who need to talk to someone, right? Or who like you need to share a meal with them, or whatever the case may be. So I feel like if we continue to think of marriage as a sacrificial act and not like a consumeristic one, I feel like that would also change the way we think about these things.
Do you think less people would get married?
Maybe so. I mean, that's a whole other conversation. Yeah. if you guys have time, I've got one final question, and then I'm happy to be done. So, what kinds of advice would you guys give to, like maybe in the event that one day you get married and have kids, maybe like your own kids, who are maybe in high school or college, or high school kids or college kids that you just know. What kinds of advice would you give them about making friendships and things that they should be thinking about?
Well, I mean, we've used this word a lot throughout the past hour of talking, but just intentionality, and not only intentionality in like once you're in the friendship and making sure it's healthy, but even entering into it and really thinking about, is this somebody I want to get close to? And I just see like in people, and I guess I work with youth, so I'll just speak to that. In that demographic of like high school, you kind of just end up in friendships, and it's like, I don't really know how I got here. Like, well, this person liked Cheez-Its and I like Cheez-Its, so I guess we'll hang out, and now we're friends. And it's like, no, be thoughtful about the people that you're getting really close to, and obviously like still be in a relationship with others. But if you're going to let people into kind of that next level of friendship where you're going to go deep with them, be thoughtful on the front end of, is this somebody I actually want to get close to? And then once you're in it, like be in it, be heart and soul. And when it gets hard, like still put in the effort, because on the front end, you saw that this person's going a similar direction in life. Like they're pursuing Christ-likeness. They want to be more like Jesus. And so I'm going to work to make this work. And so that intentionality from the start, I would say, is huge. And I would really push that.
I think kind of going along with that is not just the intentionality with the other person, but intentionally getting to know yourself and being honest with yourself about who you are and where you're at just in life. Because if you're not, then you're not going to be able to, find those people who really fulfill you and satisfy that need for community that we all have. And so that honesty, that intentionality of just like knowing who you are and your needs and being able to communicate that to others, I think is really important. And it's something that I've had to learn like later in life. And, but I do believe it's a habit that can be built from when you're younger, to make it easier to enter into these relationships that, not all of them are going to be perfect, but if you're honest with yourself, it'll be easier to see what isn't meeting your needs before it gets to a point where it becomes really hurtful and hard to like end that. So
I would say, much like marriage is all about sacrifice, I think so is just love in general. And so in friendship, when you say like, hey, I love you, it's, I'm willing to set myself aside for you. And in that intentionality, sure, maybe I'm doing something super important, but my friend is going through something hard. And so I'm going to set aside whatever I'm doing to be that friend for them, and make that a consistent habit. And I think that can be really hard. Like that's love and that's friendship. And that's essentially what God calls us to in friendship is, I will set myself aside to love you as best as I can. And sometimes that might mean saying like, hey, you know what? You have to figure this out on your own. But, obviously that comes with wisdom.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with everything everyone said. Emily, after you, I just think of the verse that says, like, true love is to lay down one's life for one's friend. And I constantly think of that. And I strive for that, in friendships. And I hope that other people and, a daughter or a son someday would strive to love so well that they would be sacrificially loving others. And so I would say that. And also I would say, depending on the child, if they're like me and they struggle with opening up to people, or if they're more introverted, I would say find the people who you can open up with and just be totally honest and open, and because that's really healing. And as humans, we need that. Like, we were made for relationship with people and with God and with family. And so I would say, find the people who you can just be open with and talk about the really difficult things. And it's okay to be dealing with crazy things that go on in your life, and you're not alone in that. So find the people who want to walk through that with you, who will sacrificially love, around you. That's, I guess, what I would say. Yeah.
Thanks for talking with me, guys.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's been great.
That was fun.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please subscribe and please share with your friends.